Hello and welcome to our midweek meditation. I'm Victor Kim, the lead minister at Richmond Presbyterian Church. And this week, I'm really grateful to be joined by Gordon Stager, one of the members of our congregation. And I'm going to be in conversation with Gordon so that during this pandemic time, we can get to learn some more about some of our own members of our congregation. Now, Gordon will probably be a familiar face to many of you, but I'm not sure how much you know about Gordon beside the obvious, that of course, the family, Graham and Margie, Laura, the Stager family has been here at Richmond for a long, long time. But what else do you know about Gordon? He is maybe the strong, silent type in some ways, but let's find out what more we might be able to kind of come to know about Gordon in this conversation. So Gordon, good morning and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So Gordon, let's find out a little bit more about you. Now, we do know the family connections, but using those, you can talk about that if you want, but tell us a little bit about who you are, your family, your upbringing, maybe your education, and what you do now for a living.
Sure. I was born and raised in Vancouver. I was born into the congregation at Central Presbyterian Church, and I was there for about the first 3 years of my life before I came to RPC. I have a few very vague memories of being there and another one I think of driving home across the Cambie Bridge or something. So I have my memories are just started kicking in just before I started coming to RPC. My parents both have very different sort of tastes in music. So my exposure to music was very early and very varied. I mean, my dad likes a lot of his Bach, his Mozart, and his Beethoven and such. And my mom was a big Beatles fan when she was younger, and so they both still had a lot of their music. So I was able to get a lot of exposure very early. Right after I left high school, like a month or so afterwards, I took a job at UPS Canada at the Vancouver hub. I was basically loading trucks and started out loading trucks, and I started sorting packages based on postal codes, and that went on for a number of years while I was doing my BBA, and eventually I got promoted to part-time supervisor, and that was sort of the place where I ended up finding myself. Like I've never really known for certain what kind of job I want to do. And I don't think I'm the kind of person that can do one job for the rest of my life. And so being in the part-time supervisor position, I was able to learn pretty much all of the basic life skills of the world. Like I learned how to lead my own team. I learned how to manage data. I learned how to take on high pressure jobs. Like one of my jobs was to go out and do the check the yard for any trailers they might have missed. So I was basically the last line of defense for the group there, which seems very daunting, but it was something that I was good to do, and I didn't miss anything, so I was good to do that.
Yeah.
After that, I ended up. I wanted something that was actually full time. Like I could work for more than the 5 hours I was paid, and I could normally be compensated for that. So I was basically working a full-time job in a part-time official title. But eventually, I transferred over to become a driver, and that's sort of from my business studies perspective. That's kind of rounded out my skill set. I now have a customer service element to my resume as well now. So I'm basically set in terms of the fundamentals, in terms of foundation and education.
So you've been with UPS for a while now,
Yeah.
but as you said, you're not the kind of person that sees yourself at this job for the rest of your life, or doing this sort of work. So we'll see what the future holds, and I want to come to that a little bit later in our conversation. Um, we also know that you've touched upon music and the sort of the wide diversity of the music that you were exposed to in your family growing up, from Bach to the Beatles, and Beethoven and all that. So you, when I first met you here, you were already with the worship band, and most weeks you played the bass, and these days you mostly play the guitar, the 12-string guitar.
Yeah.
Tell us about how you got connected with the praise band, the worship band here at RPC, and maybe what is it about music that is there a connection to your spirituality through music? And if so, can you tell us a little bit about how that works for you?
Sure. I mean, my musical journey really started back in grade 2, I think it was, when I started playing the piano, which look, and I'm glad I did that because I learned how to read music. I got to play in some festivals and was able to establish a modest trophy and medal collection despite having no athletic bones in my body whatsoever. Um, and later on, as I got older, I got to play some more pop stuff as well as classical stuff. So I was able to branch out that way. Uh, Guitar came in my few years of elementary school, and in the elementary school I attended, in grade 5 you did ukulele, and then in grade 6 and grade 7 you moved on towards the guitar. And the teacher there was his taste in music was very much centered in like 60s and 70s stuff, like CCR, BB King, the Beatles. Again, so I was somewhat familiar with the style, and it was, looking back, it's the thing I like best in out of all of the things that I did in school. And the teacher himself played a 12-string guitar, and that was where I got the idea to do it myself from. And it's also where I started out in playing bass as well. He had this big bass, this upright bass, like the bass fiddles there. And so when I was 11 years old, I was playing this huge bass, trying to reach up here and pick out notes and follow along the song on the screen. And eventually I bought my own bass when I was, I think, 20, and just brought it to church one day, just said, "Oh, can I play bass this week?" And that said, "Sure." And it stuck. And I mean, James has already kind of gotten into how we got started in the praise band at church already. My story is very similar. It was something that they put feelers out looking for volunteers, and I jumped at the chance to do it because it was something that I missed after I left elementary school. And it's something that's like I've played solo before, and I've played in the elementary school band before, and I've played in this praise band before, and it really is a different skill set in all of those different arenas. Like when you're playing solo, you're conjuring everything up from within yourself. When you're playing in like your elementary school band, I played an instrument called the bass clarinet there. You're kind of following your music and occasionally checking up at what the conductor is doing, depending on what you're at in the song. And then in the praise band, you're not only playing, you're listening to everybody else. There's nobody really conducting you. You just kind of have to feel it out within yourself. And it's a different skill set in every place. And I've been grateful to Matt to be able to help me along there and really expand my horizons in that respect.
You said you played bass clarinet in your band. I can do you one better. I did the contrabass clarinet. You got to sit on a stool to play that thing. is there any sort of connection with your faith and how the music plays a role in your faith? Is that something that's really important for you? Do you use music, for example, as a way of meditating around issues of faith or prayer? Is that anything that might resonate with you?
Um, Sometimes the music has been such a constant. It's been really the one sort of constant thing that I've had in terms of knowing what I like to do. Like I've done a whole bunch of different kinds of jobs within my positions at UPS before, but I've never really felt like this is who I am and this is what I want to do, despite all of the life lessons and such that I've learned from that. But coming to church every day and just being up there and playing music, I mean, I feel like I could be doing, if I could do that for the rest of eternity, then that's what I should be doing. And that's my role in the kingdom. That's nothing else has ever been able to replicate the sensation of that when I'm up there and looking out over the congregation and we're worshiping together. So that's my spiritual niche and my place in the kingdom.
Well, listen, I'm really glad to hear that because, I sometimes marvel at people like you and James and others who, as volunteers, week after week after week, come to church, whether it's in-person services or whether, as we're doing now, we're having to record. As volunteers, I just think, boy, that sense of motivation has to be so strong. And to hear you say that for you, this is sort of how you feel connected, to your place in the kingdom, that you could see yourself doing this for a long, long time. I'm grateful to hear that, and it really helps me to understand the motivation and the discipline that people like you bring to that the work with our praise team. So thanks for that. I really appreciate that. Gordon, in terms of your own kind of faith journey, are there people that you kind of hold? I've asked other people this, like, are there people that you look up at and say, that's somebody that would be kind of a hero or a role model to me, maybe either on a large, broad scale or something more intimate?
Yeah, there's a couple of people that come to mind. First of all is my grandmother, who passed away about 5 years ago now. I think she was part of this congregation for a number of years, and she was able to maintain this sense of, like, she always dressed herself very properly. She had a very good sense of what was appropriate and what she should be doing. Like, she came to church in her gloves and her hat in a time when most people show up in a hoodie and jeans, and yet she also was able to connect with people in a way that made you feel like she was not doing this to maintain a sense of religious or religious duty or whatever, but it was more a sense of respect for the people around her. And that's, while I will never be the people person that she was, it's something that I've always tried to take after, and it's why you'll never see me in church in jeans and a t-shirt or anything like that. And also,
That's a great point that you just made, because people will notice that you are always well dressed and well put together when you come to church. And I never connected that to your grandmother until you just said that now, that she kind of modeled that sense of care for
yeah.
you. So that's a very interesting connection. Thanks.
Mhm. And yeah, the other thing I was going to say, this was back in I guess my late teens. There was another sort of one of my high school classmates that I worked with on the we were both on the stage crew together on the school production in 2007, I think it was. And being very sort of inverted and withdrawn. I didn't really get to know him that well. He was a lot more outgoing, easygoing, good with people than I was, but I didn't really get to know him until I heard his eulogy, I'm embarrassed to say. But and it was, there's something special about the life of a person that, you know, you can study the person's life and how God provided things for them throughout their life in its entirety. And it takes on a lot more meaning in terms of when it's a life that that's touched yours, even if it's just for a few hours every week in school. And that was sort of the part of the driving force. When I was also reading a book a few years later called The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, and it sort of put me in this position where I went from sort of thinking about the world in terms of God versus science, because that was the narrative that was being rammed down everybody's throat in those days, to sort of a lifestyle that would bring about the best in everyone and in everything. And so it was sort of a wave of all of those things in rapid succession. Well, maybe not so rapid succession, but it all sort of culminated in that realization. And that was when I realized that the Christian faith was something that I actually wanted to pursue for myself in my own heart. And it wasn't just something that I'd been told by my parents. It wasn't, you know, it was a practical thing. It wasn't just a list of talking points anymore. So that was, it was a process, basically.
Yeah, it's amazing how these different individuals in our lives really serve to kind of encourage us, or to kind of guide us into a certain direction around our own faith. And it's great to hear about both, you know, this friend of yours, but also your grandmother, and how that impacted your journey around things like understanding, you know, that it's about how we live, and why we choose to live that way. Speaking about that, so you've touched on this a little earlier, but maybe just kind of the end. Where is life taking you? If you could say, this is what I'd like to be doing now, other than being in our praise band, which we hope that you will be for a long time. After all, I mean, your dad has been with us for 26 years plus, so you've got a great model to follow. But otherwise, and other than that, in terms of sort of work, what really interests you? What do you kind of look forward to?
Well, I'll probably be driving for another couple of years until I get to top rate, so that I can carry over my pay rates into whatever I do next. I mean, I really like the data management stuff that I was doing as a part-time supervisor, especially. I mean, I'm grateful to have rounded out my skill set, but again, whether I go into management after this, whether I go into an operations management specialist position after this, is anyone's guess. I'm going to wait and see what God has in mind, because oftentimes almost all the time, I can't ever predict what he's going to do, and it ultimately ends up in something far better than I ever thought would be possible for myself. So who knows?
A little, not too many months ago, you moved into your own place down towards Steveston there.
Yep.
How are you liking your new place and living on your own?
It's really nice. It's quiet. It's peaceful. It's it's taking on those. It's empowering in a lot of ways. You know, you can kind of go and live out as you can think about. What am I trying to say here? It's brought me almost a sense of stability to my life that I haven't had in a long time. Even with all the added responsibilities, there's still a sense of stability that I very much appreciate.
Well, we wish you well as you continue to grow into that stability more and more, as you grow into just the person that you are more and more in terms of work, in terms of your faith. And we're really grateful for the gifts that you bring into worship here at RPC on a weekly basis. And so I want to thank you for this conversation, for letting us know a little bit more about you. I think it's been really, really illuminating and very helpful. And hopefully the people that will be watching this will get a sense of who you are a little bit more than they may have had already. So let me close with a word of prayer.
Sure.
Gracious God, I give you thanks for Gordon and for how you are working in his life and how you have been always in his life and the life of his family. And we know and we trust that you will continue to guide him as his faith in you grows and matures. We thank you for the gifts that Gordon brings, and in particular to our worship as a member of our worship praise team. He's been so faithful, and we give you thanks for that faithfulness and for the amazing skills that he brings to allow our worship to be one of praise and one of joy. We ask that you would bless him at his work. We ask that you would watch over him in his new home. And we ask that you would bless Gordon and the entire family. All of this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Gordon, thanks very much for joining us and have a great day.
Thanks, you too.